Brilliant, thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I've been on the call for maybe about a quarter of an hour. Really interesting to see the questions that are coming up about the UCAT and the BMAT. So I'll be talking a little bit about actually how at Leicester we score our students when they're looking for applications. So maybe there'll be a little bit in there so you can see how the nuts and bolts of things work at one of the universities that are around. I'm just going to share my screen with you guys a minute, and I'll get myself started. So hopefully that's okay for everyone. You can see those that first slide about applying to Leicester Medical School. So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really delighted. Great to see the number of students on the call today. I'm going to spend maybe about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, no more than that, telling you a little bit about what we do at Leicester, what our process is for admissions, and also to emphasise a little bit more on the personal statement and try and give you a few little ideas about how we can use techniques, reflective practice, things like that, about showing and proving a few of our abilities and skills that are looked for in the application, and certainly things that you'll be asked in interview. And I saw earlier today we've already had a couple of talks which have included MMIs, which is what we use at Leicester. So what are we looking for? I'm sure you've spent the whole day with slides that have talked a little bit along these lines, but very much we're looking for you as individuals to come to us and develop those holistic and medical skills that produce good doctors. And that's what we're in the business of doing, if you like. We are a medical school that has been producing really good doctors for any number of years now. And that period, that 5 years period of training, is something where we are looking not only to develop your problem-solving skills, as you can see up on the board here, that scientific ability, your understanding of the topic and the subject area, but also developing you as a rounded doctor as well. So how do we go about treating people with respect? How do we develop empathy, that ability to care for others? The ability or the willingness to take on responsibility, leadership, all those types of things. And you'll develop those over your course at medical school. We live in uncertain times, so the ability to manage uncertainty is really, really important. And the idea of resilience and being able to respond to rapidly changing situations are things that we're looking for in our students at the start, but also things that you'll develop along your journey as well. So we know that medicine is an enormous subject. It provides us with any number of challenges and things to develop over our 5 years and then on into our foundation training. So there's going to be a lot to learn. And certainly at Leicester, you'll be starting with the kind of basic molecular science, thinking also about sociology, epidemiology, working your way up to looking at those clinical skills as well. So pulling everything together, all that information together in one place to solve patient problems is what we're looking for. And I know a lot of you out there in the audience are already incredibly curious, incredibly driven to those goals. So we are very grateful for those type of students to be applying at Leicester and coming through and developing the next group of doctors. The approach that we take for students and the way we were looking to teach you is a blend of the traditional and the innovative of our teaching. So you can see in the pictures above here, we've got all our students in our wonderful lecture theatre. All students get an iPad when they come into induction, and they keep that piece of equipment all the way through until they leave. Take that away with you. And we're seeing students across all 5 years using those iPads to really build their resources of information, their resources of learning that they do in phase 1, but also through their clinical work and taking exams in year 4 and 5 online as well. So very much that kind of innovative way of delivering our teaching, but also giving you that traditional approach in which you will have some lectures, but we'll also have a lot of guided learning through small group work. You'll also have a very early clinical experience in the first 2 weeks of starting in year one. We're not a problem-based learning curriculum. We don't give you a problem and then let you follow that for 8-10 weeks. We're very much about building your experience as you go on and you go forward. So very much looking at guided learning. We put you into Belbin groups of 8 or 9 very early on, and you use those groups to not only learn from each other and learn from our clinical teaching fellows, but also to develop those elements of leadership, discussion, and so on through the teaching. So I painted a very brief picture, and we'll talk again at the end of the slides a little bit about a little bit more about how we teach at Leicester. But let's look now at the different pathways to medicine at our medical school. So there are 3 main pathways as we look at it. So we have our 5-year A100 course. So that very much mirrors the rest of those types of courses that you see across the sector. We also have a foundation year, a 6-year medicine with a foundation year, our A199, and that's opening to our students from the widening participation background. And I know, again, you've had speakers talking about widening participation. Again, Leicester is very much built towards increasing our widening participation scope. And there's a slide in a little bit where we'll talk about what that means and what the requirements are for that. Equally, we have a number of courses, 16, it's just gone up to 17 courses that are eligible for transfer from the first year of the BSc into our first year of our MBCHB course. Biological science, natural science, we've also just started a BSc in clinical sciences, which is quite unique because in that course you'll mirror the first year of our medical degree, and then if you get in the top deciles of those and apply to move on to the A100, you'll actually join that in the second year because you will have been doing the same curriculum. So lots of different options as you build your choices through UCAS, and I saw a little bit in the chat, people talking about, what might be my 5th option. I would consider, look at universities, look at the other pathways and see if there are other ways in which you could move yourself forward into medicine, but give yourself options, give yourself opportunities to do that. You can't take that BSc in biological sciences and transfer to a different medical school, but you can certainly pursue medicine at Leicester and carry on with that. There's just a little bit here about why we call our course what we do and how it matches with other ones that you would have seen today. How do you apply? I guess you know all this, so I won't linger on this. 15th of October this year is that incoming deadline. I listened to the previous speaker talking about UCAT and BMAT. I think the big thing to come from all applications is be prepared. Don't leave it to the last minute. Get support from your teachers and people around you. Make sure you really hone in on those details on your application and really make sure that if you get yourself into that interview, that you're prepared to really dig down and talk about your application and the experiences you've had. Get opportunity to take those 4 medical schools, have a little think about what that backup course might be, where you might want to go. So certainly for our 2021 entry, this is our timeline, if you like, that we're working to at the moment. So obviously have open days. A lot of those open days at the moment are virtual. We ran one yesterday at Leicester, which was very popular. Really great to chat to students online there about their aspirations and what our course looked like and what they were thinking of doing. Students then, we've got our 15th of October UCAS deadline, and then our UCAT scoring, which will begin to come into us in and around November time, as we saw on the previous speaker's slides. Once those things are pulled together, we'll be looking at scoring our students and bringing them into interview some time between December and February. And of course, those interviews at this moment with COVID are subject to change, hence the asterisks. Whether those things will be online or whether those are face-to-face. I'll preempt any questions at the moment. I couldn't comment on what those will look like in such a fast-moving situation. Scores are ranked, offers are made February to March. then we invite our students with their offers to come and see us again in March and April, have a bit of a closer look at what we do, talk to our other members of staff. And again, we've done this year's offer holder day online, and it was really successful. Students enjoyed it very much. So 15th of October, that deadline. Minimum age requirements on the first of the year in which you go in the September. Important, about 5 lines down there, the number of people that we take. So 290 places are what we have on our course, of which 18 of those students are classed as international students. So this is our A100 course, our 5-year MBCHB. So it's going to be competitive. Again, I saw in the chat on the previous slide, why do we take UCAT? Why is it important to get a good score? Because medical school applications are incredibly competitive, and each university, each medical school has a different limit on the number of students it can take at any one time. So let's look at a few of our academic requirements. So I've got the details here of our numbers looking into our 2021 entry. So all of our applicants, we were looking at at least a grade B or a 6 in English language as a first language, maths, 2 sciences, so the usual chemistry, biology, or our double science. For students taking methods and application in maths, our minimum requirement is a B or a 6 again, but we will only score methods in maths. What about our school leavers? Well, that's a bit of a sore point at the moment, but under normal conditions, we'd be looking at our 3 A's predicted across A level. So chemistry or biology, +1 from chemistry, biology, physics, maths, or psychology. We will accept A star, AB with an A in chemistry or biology. We also accept BTEC, you can see there. We also accept the International Baccalaureate as well. So I haven't put all those up there, but we're certainly open to all of those different applications. Graduates, we're looking for grade B in A-level chemistry or biology, predicted or obtained 2-1 or honours degree in any subject. For access to medicine, please check our website. I've got some really nice website details to provide you right at the end, which will give you a real overview of all of the application details. For international students, we look at equivalent qualifications, as do most universities. If you've taken qualifications other than GCSEs and so on, then certainly we'll ask you for those transcripts, and I would suggest you look at our website or email our med admin, and they'll be able to put you on the right lines about that. I know certainly with a lot of our international applications, everyone has a unique background or a unique set of qualifications, and so we'll look at those on an individual basis as we go forward. So that's our A100 course. Our 6-year with foundation, our A199, those details are shown here. I guess the key thing with everything which engages with widening participation is that we require our students to meet those widening access requirements. So those again are on our website. Those are detailed and they will apply to some people and won't apply to others. So it's really important that you have a look through those and see how you meet those requirements. 35 places available on A199. 25 of those places are open for students who've been residents for at least 2 years in the East Midlands. A further 10 places are then across the UK. So our widening participation agenda has been very much focused on helping our young people within the Leicester and the East Midlands area. And we've been very fortunate to have backing from local benefactors to help with that. The great thing this year is we've filled this course quite well. We've got 35 students and we've got all our students from our catchment area. So we're really pleased at how we're being able to engage with our widening participation program. You can see up there with what we require for A-levels, 3 Bs, and what we also require within our GCSEs. Again, we accept International Baccalaureate, BTEC, and other entry requirements as well. So another option that's open, but please do look at our widening access requirements if that's something that interests you. And then our third pathway, if you like, is that internal transfer. So students coming from us and doing one of our courses that allow you to then transfer across to year one of our A100 course. So just a little bit of information here about the requirements for that. So we're looking at really the top of the class in those degrees. So a credit weighting average of at least a first class mark. We're still looking for students to have a grade B at A level in either chemistry or biology. We still require a minimum B at GCSE in the subjects that you can see there. And we still require students to take the UCAT, which is the entry exam that Leicester uses. So you'll still be invited to interview. You still need to go through the same process as students going through A100. So it's another way in, it's another pathway, it's another opportunity, but it will still be competitive and it will still be very, very rigorous in its process. We're seeing an increase in students coming into our A100 through this pathway, and we're seeing some really good students coming across as well. So we're very much engaging in students coming in and using that pathway. Really great to catch the end of the previous talk. You guys are extremely up on what the BMAT and what the UCATs are. I did have the slide in with a little bit of information on both. I now realise that I really didn't need to do that. I guess the important takeaway from this slide is that Leicester uses the UCAT. Yeah, that's the admissions test that we use. And you know, the website there is really very good. Lots of practice tests, a question bank, the app, all those types of things. And I would reiterate what the previous speaker was talking about. It's all about preparation. It's all about practice. It's all about doing the very best you can on that. And again, you guys already know this information. Who does what? We sit there in amongst that group of about 25, 26 universities using the UCAT as our admissions test. And again, the things about admission tests and where they look and what the values are, here's our scoring. So we will score you for interview out of a total of 64. And that 64 points is split between 32 that comes from the UCAT score and 32 that comes from your GCSEs. So we have a 50-50% split on your mark that comes from those two components, okay? So the key thing here is, and I'll show you how we score the GCSEs in a couple of slides' time, is you have a little bit of wriggle room. So if your UCAT isn't quite as strong or doesn't quite work out on the day that you want, if you've got those really strong GCSEs, then that's going to make up a little bit of your 64 points. Vice versa, if your GCSEs, something didn't quite work out for you, if you really ace the UCAT, you can again pull your score up. Yeah, so as you can see in the bottom of the slide here, we score anybody in the bottom two deciles of that year's results a maximum of 16 points. So you can see our 2020 entry score, 228. Anybody with the situational judgment test in Band 4 at Leicester, we automatically reject. So the key thing here is practice matters, okay? But for Leicester, 50% of that score looking to invite you to interview will come from the UCAT. How's COVID-19 changed UCAT? Well, there'll be a lot of students at the moment still taking the UCAT, and they'll be using that either a mixture of doing it in person at a test centre or using the online proctored service. From the messages that are coming through to me, they're very much, students are not disadvantaged or advantaged using either of those two at the moment. And it sounds like UCAT through Pearson have got that working really, really well. So it would be interesting to see that delivery model having changed, be interesting to see how those scores and how those things sit as we move forward. So if you're choosing that predicted A-level pathway, if you've taken your UCAT, if you've provided us with your GCSE results, we'll score your GCSEs in this way. So we'll score 8 of them, giving us a maximum of 32 points based on the scoring that you can see here. So an A star or 8-9 will give you 4, an A, 3, and so on and so forth. So it's really important based on that scoring that we really are looking at those Bs and above, which we require. So if you're interested in how we've scored previous years, website on here will take you to our scoring data. We're completely transparent with it. We'll show you what scores got students interviews in previous years. And remember, the way that we score and the scores that come out depend on the cohort of students that are coming to us that year. Yeah, so it's based on the total cohort, how people are performing at UCAT, how people are performing at GCSE. And so those thresholds and those score values will subtly change year in, year out. So I couldn't tell you a score that would guarantee to get you an interview. I can only show you what's happened previously, and I know you guys will work really hard to do the absolute best you can. And that's the message that our previous speakers have been talking about, and I would reiterate that as you move forward. I'm going to stop for a little bit and talk a little bit about the personal statements in a bit more detail. Now, oddly enough, you can see on the first bit of my slide here, we don't routinely view your personal statement pre-interview at Leicester. And a number of medical schools may look at your personal statement a little bit earlier, others will not. We use it purely as a tiebreaker, and we use it at interview to initiate discussions with you. So that doesn't make it any less important because we're not using it pre-interview. In fact, if anything, it makes it more important because someone's going to sit down with you and they're going to use that personal statement as a process, as a guide to having a discussion with you in the interview. So it's really important that it's your own work. You've got to go in there and feel comfortable that you can talk around it and talk about your experiences. What you write will govern the way that certain aspects of your interview will go. Unlike my lectures and my talks, it needs to be concise. Yeah, it needs to be to the point and give really good, concise information. And a key thing is you must have that reflection on what you've learned, whatever life experiences you had. Obviously, we sit in a world at the moment where a lot of work experience and a lot of medical-based experience has been lost or is different. Key thing is you're all in the same boat. Yeah, everybody is going to have that same experience, and so it's not going to disadvantage you in any way. Yeah, but be prepared to talk about what you've done in interview. So what kind of things are we talking about when we look at a statement as we move forward? So a lot of these things you will already know. So the motivation to want to start that 5 or 6 years within a medical career, the commitment to being able to sit there and do those things, the appreciation of the challenges, work experience, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and how those things have changed over the last few months, how extracurricular activities fit in there. So where we may have lost things to do with work experience that might have a medical focus, we may have built further in extracurricular activities, ways in which we've helped and experienced in other ways recently that can provide you with the same information for your personal statement. How do we contribute to school and college? How do we contribute to the wider community? How do our written communication skills look like? This is a piece of extended writing that people will be looking at. How does that transpose or show the kind of person that you are? Yeah, and confirmation of some aspects of that personal statement will have to sit in your reference as well. It's really important that you share that personal statement with the people doing your reference, so those things dovetail together and make a really good story, a really good piece of information that admissions tutors can look at and interviewees and interviewers can look at and discuss. So if you go on the Medical School Council's website and ask the question, what are the key skills and attributes that medical schools have agreed that they'll be looking at in personal statements, then we've got a long list of those that are on my next slide here. I'm not going to go into all of these in excruciating detail, but you can see there's lots of things here that you will have been building in your portfolio of experiences. Yeah, things like teamwork, problem solving, all those types of things, but also things that are naturally inbuilt for us. So our empathy for others, we may have learned about that develop that over time. Things like honesty are things which are inbuilt in us on a personal basis. Our conscientiousness, what that might look like. How have we had experiences when we've shown that level of conscientiousness? Being able to deal with uncertainty. We live in uncertain times, but you may have experiences that precede all that, that show how you've dealt with different bits of personal adversity over time is done. So all of these things, all of this information, blending it together to show the type of person you are, how you've developed your skills and your attributes, how have you made you as a prospective medical student. So how do we think about constructing the statement? How would we go about that? What would be our motivation? How do we show? And probably the most difficult part of the personal statement is starting it. How do we get across to somebody why we want to do this incredible job that we do? Many people may start with the following types of ideas, or they might be sitting in their head and they might ask, how do I get this down onto paper? So I love to study science. I love working with people. So I want to be a doctor. So there you go. There's my motivation. Or I've had some kind of medical experience myself, or a member of my family, or whatever it is. And suddenly I've had that epiphany that I then want to have that career as a doctor. Those are two very, very valid ways of approaching starting your statement and showing your motivation. But sometimes we can think a little bit more deeply or a little bit differently about how we might get that information across. So how about, why do I love science? And what's a personal example of this? Or what is it about caring for people that inspires me? What experience initiated all this? Now, those questions are no different from the two just above. They've just been worded in a slightly different way. And the key thing is they're asking for you to provide some evidence or to reflect on an experience. And that's the key thing with a personal statement. Don't just list things that fit within those attributes, or I'm a very motivated person, or since I was whatever age, I wanted to be a doctor. How do you get that across and show the value of that? How do you show that personal experience? And that's a really difficult thing to do. And that's where you need to sit down and have people read through a draft of your personal statement and talk about how you can develop that narrative as it runs all the way through. What about exploration, the way in which we explore different things and how we move our way forward? So we can gain experiences through work experience, through volunteering, community work, or our wider experiences where we might work with a sports club or coach young people in particular activities. How does that help? How does that help with those skills that I'm looking at? As I've said here, don't just write a list. Think about how these experiences impacted and affected you. How have they moved you forward? Yeah? What did you do within those situations? What did you gain as the experience as you move forward? Yeah? You might find partway through that statement that you want to talk about something really specific. So what was it? How did it happen? What did you learn from it? What have you taken away from it? What would you do differently when you have that experience or something like that again? So always relate that work experience to skills, to attributes that we looked at a little bit earlier. And the key thing for me as an academic and throughout our lives is we're being asked to reflect on things a lot more. So using reflective practice, asking the question, what happened in that experience? Was it a good or a bad experience? Remember, sometimes we learn a lot of things in situations that don't quite go as we planned. Yeah? What else could I have done in that situation? Could I have worked differently? Or did I observe someone in the same situation do something in a different way? And I thought, now I understand. Now I know where I would like to take that forward. And, that's what we do when we shadow doctors and when we look at people in the medical profession. We look at the way in which they've behaved in a situation and we learn something from that experience and we take that experience forward with us. So how have those situations come to you? How have you been able to do those things? and that idea of suitability. So show that you understand what qualities are desirable in a doctor. Yeah. How do you share and explain those traits, and how you won't have them all at this time? Medical school is about training you and not only making you knowledgeable in factors about disease and treatment and anatomy and understanding molecular basis of things. It's also about developing you as a person, as a total package of being able to give that caring humanitarian partnership with your patient. So again, don't just list those skills, explain, describe how you've acquired them. Yeah. So think about when you're trying to justify or trying to explain that ability to treat people with respect. You could say, rather than I have that ability, which you may well have, how about, and I've just used an example here, during my work experience at a care home, I so-and-so. Now, I appreciate that that's been challenging for people at different times, but it's just the way that we word those statements, that we move the experience to the front, and then we use that experience to explain how we've acquired those skills. So I'm sure you do these things anyway. Think about people already in the medical profession. You've heard from so many fantastic people already today. What are their values? How do they behave? Consider speaking, discussing with those people. What are their experiences? What have you learned from those people as you move forward? A lot of that from the statement point of view relies on work experience, and we've seen things change massively over time. I think we've already had speakers who've talked a little bit about this. The key thing for me is probably the bottom point on this slide. Yeah, a lot of applicants, or all applicants, are in very much the same situation. So the message from Leicester is, please don't worry about that. We understand that. Think about what you have done. Think about how those reflect on your experience, the skills, NHS values, the things that might come up in interview. So you won't be disadvantaged. Everybody's in the same boat. We have to think a little bit differently now. But there are a number of different online or virtual ways of gaining work experience, and Leicester strongly supports those programs and would strongly advise students to be looking at those as they move forward. And I've just listed a few of them here. We at Leicester have got our own work experience package that we've been trialing a little bit this year, and students have engaged in that really well when we've talked to them about that. And remember, it's not just work experience that counts in this regard as well. Work experience placements, the opportunity to shadow someone is really important. But experience of paid employment, again, I know that's challenging at this stage, but to show leadership in that regard, to be given responsibility, to have to solve problems, to have to deal with people, all of those things can come from outside of the medical sphere as well. Volunteering, whatever that might look like, participation in social activities, helping and supporting communities, things that you may have done within school and college as well. Look at all these experiences. Ask yourself how you've derived evidence that you can use on your personal statement, accumulation of those skills, the knowledge that's relevant to starting your career in medicine. So how can you get across how you've developed those attributes? Once you've written that personal statement, once we've looked at your UCAT scores, once we've looked at your GCSEs, we will score you, and then we will look at what our cutoff is, and then we will look to invite a proportion of those students in those top deciles to interview. So it's ranked by that total score, 50% GCSEs, 50% from the UCAT, yeah? Just working on our most recent data, we invite somewhere or recently just over 1,200 students invited to interview between December and February of last year and this year. And we use the MMI, which I know you've already had some discussion about today with other speakers. And of course, what those MMIs will look like from a social distancing format, again, I can't comment about at this stage and at this moment. But We know that there will be a mixture of different people that will be talking to you and interviewing you, and those stations may be with those people, or they may be a different type of activity. They're nothing to be afraid of, and I know you've probably had information about this already. We like them as a process, as a way of interviewing. Why? Because every different station is a different chance, it's a different opportunity. There's no doubting that in any situation in life, we get nervous, and sometimes that initial interaction in that interview may not be exactly what you wanted or what you envisaged the night before. Doesn't matter. That first impression, you just move on to the next station and you build your confidence as you move forward. And that's got to be a fairer system. Yeah. And equally, then it doesn't depend on who you get. It just depends on that development of that process as you move forward. And I'm sure you've been given lots of advice, lots of great tips on that already. I'm just going to touch a little bit on a couple of things that are important to us at Leicester, and things that we've advised students to think about as they develop their applications and move forward. This is going to require communication skills, which is probably nothing new to you as an example. So the idea of listening, speaking, those non-verbal skills, those written skills. And we're thinking, even at that point, how do those attributes reflect then on how we develop in the medical profession? So listening, how's the patient going to communicate with me? How do I listen? How do I understand how they're using that terminology? What does that then mean to me as a health professional? Yeah. Speaking, how do I communicate to the patient, whoever they are, young, old, yeah, whoever they might be? How can I make sure that they get the information across that's important? Yeah. How can I describe it in a way to make sure that I put them at ease and they understand what I'm talking about? Sometimes that information isn't always going to be good. So in a non-verbal way, how can I be presenting myself, my body language, the way that I work? How can I do that to make sure that the person on the other side of that table, or sitting with me in whatever way it might be, how can I put them at ease, make sure that they have a good experience no matter what that information is? And I'm going to need to communicate with other doctors, other health professionals within the hospital or the GP setting. And we laugh a lot about doctors' handwriting and so on and so forth. But remember, it's an important element of this. How do we get key information across? How do we make sure that that information on a patient history is consistent and the correct information is there? So all important skills that, again, we're looking for at interview, but you will develop as you move forward at the medical school as well. So what kind of things are we looking for? Again, I won't linger too much on this. I'm sure you've had many a talk on this already today. The NHS values are really important to everyone within the healthcare professional field and within medical schools. So we certainly look at those values, and looking how can you transpose your experiences from your personal statement, from the things that you've done, to those values. So we're looking at all those types of things on both sides of this slide. So what kind of things might we ask you? What might give an example of communication skills? What might give an example of things we might ask you about NHS values? So communication skills. Maybe I could ask you something like, could you explain with that gesture or mime how to click your fingers? It's a good thing that you can do at home with friends, with family. Yeah, that's a really interesting way. How do we use our verbal communication skills to explain something that's so simple just to show in a visual manner? So think about, how can we do that? How can we take something and explain it in that way? And what about NHS values? We may ask you to look at those NHS values and ask you which of those values means the most to you. Can you provide me with an example of where you've showed that value? And we'll have, remember, again, that personal statement in front of us. You may be working off that personal statement. We may want to dig into deeper some of the experiences and things that you've done. So as much as a few slides ago I told you that we don't look pre-interview at that personal statement, doesn't mean it's any less important than at universities that do look at it earlier. It's a piece of evidence. It's something we've seen from you. We're going to use it to try and understand the type of person that you are. So just to give you a few final facts on things. So again, as I said, I caught the previous speaker. Really interesting to see the responses on the chat about UCAT and BMAT. What's a good score? Why do we need the... Really what was coming out to me was you as young people really appreciate the competitiveness of all medical schools. And it's no different with us at Leicester. 2019 entry seems a long way ago now. We don't have quite all the data back for our 2020 entry, but 2,305 applicants, 1,200 just over of those interviewed, 852 offers made, and as we saw right at the early start of the talk, 290 places on the course for A100. So as we go through that process, those numbers reduce down, and that competitive nature of all those things comes through. So you can see where each of those components that different speakers have talked to you about today begins to become and add that importance moving forward. What if I don't get a place? I guess this is the one thing that we don't want to have at the front and center of our mind at any point. If you get 3 A's, try again, yeah? Take some time out. I'm not sure if gap years are really going to be a big thing moving forward at the moment, but think about the way, again, in which you could enhance different skills as you move forward before you make that application again. If you don't get 3 A's, consider other routes. So what's my route through foundation maybe? How might I go through taking a BSc course, then looking for an internal transfer? Is it that ultimately I might think about doing something slightly different and then embarking on something that looks more like graduate entry medicine? All of those are choices in the future. But the important point of this slide is the door isn't closed, okay? And so keep working hard, keep thinking, be diligent, be prepared for all the things that come up, organize yourselves, and you will be successful. So I'm just going to finish with just a handful of slides just to tell you a little bit more about Leicester and the things that we offer. So background here of some of our graduates. Young lady on the right has actually been one of our clinical teaching fellows recently. One of the things that we really like from Leicester is a lot of people come back and give back to the university and the medical school through teaching our young early phase 1 students. So it's very much a family. It's very much a close-knit group of students, and I think it's a really good place to go through with your medical training. League tables are something that we get thrown at all the time. I've popped this slide in because I think it's a reflection of the real hard work of all our people that teach across 5-6 years of our courses and our partners in hospitals in Leicester. We're really lucky in this metric that we would be able to rank 20th in the world. You can see us up here on the right-hand side and 5th in the UK. We're really proud of that because it shows the hard work of the people that are there. And it shows, again, that we're producing really good doctors. So we're really proud of the hard work that's gone into this. And I think it shows that we're doing the right thing and we're moving our young people forward to becoming really, really good doctors. And those young people are having experience through some really good methodologies of learning. So we will teach you, as I said at the start, through the lecture process, but we will also give you that guided group work. And those group work sessions are run by our clinical teaching fellows. So those are qualified doctors who've come out of their training or their hospital environments for a period of time to come and work with us for a year and to be with you in those small group working sessions, to not only talk about the problems that we provide you, but to talk to you about their experiences. How have they seen manifestations of some of those things in the clinic or in the hospital? And you get a much more rounded holistic approach to those things. We have full cadaveric dissection. We're really lucky to have a fantastic dissection room, and we're really honoured to give our students the opportunity to have that experience. It is an honour when people donate their bodies for the opportunities for students to study. And just on the open day yesterday, students were asking about that. We had a number of students who were in the live chat talking about their experiences. And they said that when they move into their clinical rotations, the opportunity to have hands-on experience really sets them up to have a great deal of confidence then when they're in those clinical settings. We try and provide settings and situations which are clinically relevant, give students the opportunity to develop their consultation skills. We also give you the opportunity to work in a technologically enhanced setting. So again, in our anatomy department, lots of 3D printing of different parts of the anatomy to give people the opportunity to have hands-on, see what those things look like. And as I said, we issue you with an iPad and induction, and you really build your knowledge in your head along with all of those things that you keep on the iPad. And again, our students now in their clinical settings in phase 2, they're using those now to hold their notes, to develop their learning as they move forward. And they'll leave after 5 years not only being doctors, but having this real wealth of knowledge at the tips of their fingers, if you excuse the glib pun. As I've said, our dissecting room is fantastic. Very large, very well equipped, really great anatomy staff, a real good opportunity for students to work closely together, to work with staff such as myself on the different units that they do. You'll have your own cadaver for that period of time, and we'll work you through those different systems, and you really get an opportunity to learn and to see different things. And remember, nobody is the same. There are lots of really interesting things that come up during these dissections, and it's really enjoyable for students to discover those things as they move forward. A lot of our teaching and learning is done in groups, so our Belbin groups that you'll have throughout your phase 1 experience, 8 or 9 students. At the moment, we're just finishing preparing our teaching for a couple of weeks' time. Those structured tasks, sharing your understanding, teaching other students within your group. You only truly understand something if you can teach it to someone else. So building those team working skills, building that knowledge, fantastic. And all of that group work led by our experts, fully qualified teaching fellows coming in to share their experiences and their knowledge with you. And of course, there's another partner in this as well, the patient. We have a lot of situations very early in your experience where you'll be in situations with parents, with patients even, sorry. So our very early clinical experience, our first year students who will be starting tomorrow will go out and do 2 weeks of a very early clinical experience. So they'll be out in a clinical setting, the first thing that they do as part of their A100 course. And that's a fantastic way of immersing you in the subject from the very start. Something which we're also bringing on stream as part of that is students will be studying for their healthcare associate qualification as well. So you'll leave that first period of time being a qualified healthcare associate, and then you can use that moving forward as experience within the clinical setting. So I think there's a fantastic additional thing that Leicester is doing as we move forward. What will it look like? What will those students tomorrow when they wake up, what will they be doing? Well, they'll be starting in that 2-week induction and then moving into their 2-week early clinical experience before they join us in phase 1 for their starting of their learning. So we split our curriculum into 2 phases. First 2 years, phase 1 is classroom based with those early clinical experiences. And then once you finish those 2 years, you move into phase 2 where you start doing your out blocks and you start doing predominantly your clinical work. Though you will come back and join us for assessments and to interact with your personal tutor as you move forward. last two slides, and thank you all very much. I know it's been a long day, for being patient. We are teaching differently this year, and there's no doubting as we move forward that we'll take some of that new teaching forward into subsequent years. So a lot of our students this year will have some face-to-face teaching under the current regulations, but they will also have a lot of online, live lectures and virtual lectures. We will be learning as we move through that process as well. But I think one of the good things to come out of that experience as teachers is that we'll be able to take the very best of that online learning, and we'll be able to continue that along with face-to-face as and when regulations and the world changes to something that looks like the new normal, whatever that might be. So that's me. Hopefully I haven't spoken for too long. I've noticed as we've been going through this, there's loads of questions in the chat. I'm sorry I haven't been following them myself as I've gone forward. So hopefully we'll get a few moderated questions that I can maybe talk about just in these last few minutes. Just this final website at the bottom, this is our doctor's bag. Everything that you've seen today, you can access on that website. If I just come out of my screen share for the moment, I might just be able to bring this up for you and show it. So maybe I won't for now, but certainly that doctor's bag is a fantastic resource. It will show you all our scoring documents from previous years. It will show you all of the information I've been talking about, and it's a really, really nice resource. So please have a look at that when you've got your time. And thank you all for listening. I know it's been a long day, and you've listened to lots of stuff. So thank you all very much.
Chris, a lot of the questions have actually been answered during the presentation. But there's a question here about online MMI interviews.
Yeah.
Is there any? Can you give the students any insight into that, or how they're being planned? Should it get to that?
Well, certainly we've been, so with some of our international students, and certainly with students that have transferred out of the BSc degrees to start this year, they have had online MMI interviews. Because at that time, obviously the COVID regulations made it very difficult to have students in doing 8-7-minute stations. So we have trialed it. We do know it works, and we do know that it doesn't disadvantage students. So we're confident that we can do that. Whether we can do it for 1,200 students is a question I couldn't answer or say to you right now. So we feel comfortable that it's doable and it's a good experience for the students. But yeah, I think like everyone, we'd love to be able to see you face to face. So I can't give you definitive, but we know that it will work. We'll just have to see what it looks like as we move forward.
Okay. All right. Professor Mee, that was an excellent talk. Covered a huge amount of information, and everyone, I will upload this somewhere, and I'll send you an email link to it just in case you missed any of it. I'd just like to thank Christopher Mee. It was an honor having you here, giving up your time late on a Sunday afternoon to come to us.
It's an absolute pleasure. And just one thing, a student's just asked there, I'm just going to try and cut and paste into the chat the doctor's bag link that someone's just asked for. And then I know that that's done. There we go. So that's in there. So students can access it now. No, it's great. I can see there's lots of participants on the call. Like I said, I dropped into the talk beforehand, and I just amazed, all of the knowledge, fantastic interaction from all the students. I couldn't think of a better way of spending my Sunday afternoon than feeling I've contributed towards these brilliant young people. So thank you all very much for inviting me, and best of luck to all the students as they move forward. We look forward to hopefully seeing a few of you at Leicester at some point in the future.